All right. It was great to learn more about the latest React features, but for a moment, let's go back 2 years. React 18 has been just released. ChatGPT doesn't exist yet. And companies, during technical interviews, ask developers to manually sort arrays in place. And I just failed yet another interview with 4% result score. Of course, it felt awful. I couldn't understand why, after more than 10 years of doing real things on web, I couldn't get past technical screening. One option I had was to stay in the job that I didn't enjoy anymore. The other option was to study all the algorithms and trivia questions out there, which I didn't enjoy either. So I picked the third option. I decided to find a mentor. 2 years later, well, I found a job, but what's more interesting, I became a mentor myself because it turned out to be very simple. Apparently, anyone can be a mentor. There's only one rule you need to follow. Don't give advice. Don't give advice. When I was watching my mentor working with me, I realized he was doing 3 things. Asking questions, listening, and asking more questions. Simple enough. I thought, I can't do that. So I posted on LinkedIn that I'm now a mentor. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to help for free. Soon enough, a friend of friend reached out, an experienced full-stack developer who had troubles with interviews, surprise, surprise. He wasn't sure where to focus his preparation efforts, on back-end or front-end. A typical problem for a full-stack developer, very familiar to me, so we started a chat, and 20, 30 minutes into the conversation, I suddenly realized that all that time, I was given advice. Learn this tool, read this book, start a blog, go to the gym. I was unstoppable. In my defense, apparently, it's an illness, and it's called advice monster. I read about it in books, but I was sure I didn't have it. When I started watching my advice monster, I noticed it everywhere. In team meetings, in code reviews, in social media, even in my own head, my advice monster was constantly telling me how to live my own life. Exhausting. Luckily, there is a very powerful remedy. Ask more questions. How does it work? When we give advice to the other person, we subconsciously send a message. You're not smart enough. You can't sort out your own problems. You depend on me and my advice. When we give advice too soon, we don't allow the other person to figure out what their real problem is and what's that specific bit of information they miss to sort it themselves. On the other hand, when we ask more questions, we send a completely different message. You are important. What you are telling is interesting and valuable for me. I am here with you. And this very intent, in the world full of advice, experts, opinions, courses, this very intent makes things happen. So I decided, no more advice, I will be asking more questions. And the very first type of questions that I discovered in my own communication were leading questions. Leading question is a question that already contains answer. So basically, it's advice with question mark at the end. Instead of saying, read this book, I would say, what do you think about reading this book? It doesn't work. People still perceive it as advice. So I continued my journey, and I discovered Boolean questions. Very simple, yes, no, true, false type of questions. Do write tests, very easy to ask. The only problem, people find it difficult to answer no. So sometimes they say yes. Yes, but, yes, and all those variations that can lead conversation in the wrong direction. Boolean questions work well for neutral topics. They're an extreme example of so-called closed questions. Closed questions assume one correct answer. For example, when I was complaining about my interviewing experience, my mentor asked me, Kate, to clarify, how many interviews did you fail? 2. Well, for me, it was a lot. But compared to all the job postings and companies out there, it was nothing. Closed questions help us meet reality, help us be more objective. On the other side of the spectrum, we have open-ended questions. What do you want? A broad, open-ended question that has many answers, all correct. In practice, open and closed questions work great together. You start with an open question to build context, to dream, to consider different options. And then with closed questions, you figure out how to make it happen in reality, what actions to take. Soon, though, I realized that asking 1 or 2 great questions is not enough. Often, our first answer is incomplete or simplistic, so we need to actively follow up to dig deeper. And what other options have you tried? And what else? Can you tell me more? And more? And at some point, the other person may say, oh, I've got an idea how to solve my problem, thank you, and run away. And that's great, because usually we already know all the information. We just need help to put it in action. Finally, my favorite type of questions, dumb questions. People say they don't exist. They do. And they are just the best. Well, if it's something trivial, it just gets answered, you have a good laugh, that's it. But more often, dumb questions challenge something that everyone else takes for granted, that everyone else hesitates to ask. Dumb questions turn out to be smartest questions that change careers and lives. The only problem, they're hard to ask. So today, we have a great opportunity to practice asking questions. And I have a little challenge for you. Look at the agenda of the conference and come up with 3 different questions. Okay, they don't have to be dumb, but at least something honest, something that truly interests you. And ask our speakers. They will be happy to answer all kinds of questions. If anything goes wrong, you can always blame me, but I'm sure it will be great. In case you need a bit of inspiration, a slide from my advice monster, that's not it. The Coaching Habit book provides 7 questions to tame your advice monster. And where to find a mentor is a blog post with more details about my mentorship experience. My name is Kate. I'm collaborating in all social media. It was a pleasure. Thank you.